we go. All right, good evening. Call tonight's meeting to order for August 2nd, 2023. Mr. Metz, when you get a chance, please call the roll.
Gary Gross.
Here.
Jim Hall.
Here.
Todd Moore.
Here.
Christopher Ambergy. Jerry Heidenreich.
Here.
David Cash.
Here.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Here.
You have quorum.
All right, thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. All right, next on our agenda this evening is our minutes from May the 3rd and June the 7th. Any changes, modifications to the minutes?
I have one on the May 3rd minutes on second page about the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about the fifth paragraph down where it said Mr. Cash swore in Holly Barales. That paragraph. You go further down the second line there, the law firm's name is Flagel, Flagel, and Papakirk, Papakirk.
Great. Any other changes? Okay, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Gary Gross.
Yes.
Jim Hall.
Yes.
Todd Moore.
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich.
Yes.
David Cash.
Yes.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to our first case this evening, case number 923, a request by applicant Ronald Decker for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 2000 Pearl Street. Mr. Metz, I'll let you give us an overview of the facts.
So tonight before us, we have a request by applicant Ronald Decker.
Swear him in.
Yes. Yes. You just please one in. I'm sorry.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, David.
So tonight before us, we have a request by applicant Ronald Decker for the approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 2000 Pearl Street. The property is zoned R4, and the variance requested is to allow for the construction of a 4-unit multifamily dwelling that would not meet the minimum site development standards set forth in the Middletown Development Code. The property is considered a non-conforming lot of record, which would allow for a single-family home to be erected provided the building complies with minimum setbacks to the maximum extent practical. So this is the last picture we have of 2000 Pearl Street. Last year, right around May, it was demolished. So it is currently a vacant lot, and there is a massive hole where the basement was. The property is zoned R4 attached residential district. The purpose of the R4 attached residential district is to provide for moderate to high density residential development, generally located in the core area of the city, and that reflects the historic urban development pattern in and around downtown Middletown. So just a little bit of background. This property used to have a 4-unit apartment building on it. Previous to May of 2022, it was burnt down fairly significantly. You can see the roof is destroyed on this picture. And then in the next aerial photo, you can see that the roof has also been burnt through. Our building department in May 2022 issued demolition orders. The building was shortly demolished afterwards. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 122407, Nonconforming Lots of Record, B, states in any residential district, a single-family dwelling and its customary accessory uses may be erected on a vacant single lot of record after the effective of this code, provided the building is comply with the minimum setbacks to the maximum extent practical. So what that means is any vacant residential lot that used to host a single-family home but does not currently you could rebuild a single-family home as long as you try to meet the minimum site development standards to the maximum extent practical. So if the side yards are 6 feet, but you can only make it 5 feet, the city could probably work with you. In a situation like this, the width of the property is 40 feet. The length of the property is 131.6 feet, meaning that it is, in fact, a non-conforming lot of record, meaning that although the zoning district is R4 and would allow for the construction of a four-unit multifamily dwelling, only a single-family dwelling could be built on it now because it's a non-conforming lot of record unless it gets the area and dimensional variance permitted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So the site development standards for the minimum lot standards of the R4 zoning district for multifamily dwellings is as listed. 15,000 square feet minimum lot area, minimum lot width is 100 feet, minimum lot depth is 125 feet, front yard is 30, backyard is 30, and side yard is 6. So essentially 100 feet wide by 125 feet deep. Currently it's 40 feet wide by 131.6 feet deep. Last year it hosted a 4-unit multifamily dwelling. So per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way. All comments that we received were forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. There were none. The following factors shall be considered and weighed by the BZA to determine practical difficulty. Whether special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land or structure involved, and which are not applicable generally to other lands or structures in the same zoning district. Examples of such special conditions or circumstances are exceptional irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, or steepness of the lot, or adjacency to nonconforming or inharmonious uses, structures, or conditions. Whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without the variance. Whether the special conditions and circumstances are a direct result from the actions of the applicant, his or her agents, or prior property owners. Whether the variance is substantial and is the minimum necessary to make the reasonable use of the land or structures. Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer substantial detriment as a result of the variance, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services such as water, sewer, electric refuse pickup, or other vital services, whether special conditions or circumstances exist as a result of actions of the owner, whether the property owner's predicament can feasibly be obviated through some method other than a variance, whether the spirit and intent behind the code requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting a variance, whether the granting of the variance request will confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this regulation to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. No single factor listed may control, and not all factors may be applicable in each case. Each case shall be determined on its own facts. So just a brief recap. April of last year on this property, there was a 4-unit multifamily dwelling. There was a fire. There was demo orders. The building was torn down. Had the building not caught on fire and been torn down and it wanted to be rebuilt due to the fire without being fully torn down, it could be as it would be grandfathered in. Since they completely tore down the building, waited over a whole entire year before coming back, they have to come through for a variance. The zoning district would allow for a 4-unit multifamily dwelling if it met the site development standards. Since it does not, a non-conforming lot of record such as this property would only permit a single-family dwelling. They're asking for variances for almost all of the site development standards. The applicant is not present, and that ends my staff report.
I got a question for you.
Actually, I need to read this into the record as well, sorry. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of the Common Pleas as provided in Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506. Now my staff report's over. Thank you.
The question I have is on the aerial view, Is that a building behind the one that burnt down? Or what is that R4 where the R4 is? Is that a building? Or was it a building?
I think at one point in time, it might have been a garage that was converted.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was something that somebody used to live in at one point in time.
But the entire lot is flat now or whole?
Well, where the main building is to your right is a massive hole. There is a basement there. The property owner has been putting up a fence to maintain safety of the property. So,
Any other questions for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
It says here the construction would not meet minimum site development standards. What are those particular standards? Is that, we're talking setback, sideline?
yep. So that would just cover the side yard setbacks and then the front and rear yard setbacks, as well as does not meet the lot standards. So a minimum lot width would be required to be 100 feet wide. This property is 40. It would also require the lot to be 125 feet deep. This lot's like, I think, 131. So it would meet lot depth, just not lot width, and may or may not meet side yard setbacks.
Same question as Jerry. I'm familiar with the property, familiar with the fire, but I'm not clear if the building in the back, is it also demolished? Is that just a vacant lot all the way now, or is that still there?
It's a vacant lot all the way through.
Well, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward. We'll swear you in. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the variance? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance? Please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance, please come forward. Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. I do have a question before we move to deliberation. Was there any, because the applicant isn't here, Mr. Decker has certainly presented before us many times. Was there any plans that were presented for us to review? Anything that was proposed for this particular is along the question of Mr. Cash. What are we actually reviewing? We know the area and the setback requirements, but was there any plans submitted for this particular site?
There were plans for a 4-unit residential building. It's a block residential building. There were no illustrations provided. It was essentially just a site plan, an overview site plan, but it would not meet the side yard setbacks. It would not meet it would not meet the side yard setbacks. The lot would not meet the lot width. So, a more clear answer is you're not really necessarily reviewing what the building would look like. You're reviewing that the lot wouldn't meet the lot's standard for a multi-unit building, if that makes sense. So, conceptually.
Yeah, I was just, one of the review criteria is, the hardship criteria is when we look at how substantial is the variance itself being proposed. So, when we look at those setbacks, are we talking how far in terms of scale is it substantial? Is it minor? Exactly what are we reviewing?
So the front yard and rear yard setback for the property would be met. The side yard setbacks, I think, were 5 feet, so it's only a foot off. An administrative waiver could cover that. The issue is not necessarily the building on the lot. It is the lot itself is not large enough by our standards for a 4-unit.
So what if the plans that are submitted call for a 2-foot side setback, which may be not allowable by administrative action? Does that come back to us?
That would come back to you.
All right. Okay, so we're just allowing a 4-unit to, subject to plans being submitted to the planning department, subject to them being approved by planning department or denied, and then coming back to us for further variance action?
It would just come back to you. We would work with the applicant. Like I said, almost all of the site development standards would be met, or if not met with an administrative waiver. The issue is just that they no longer have their legal nonconforming status as a 4-unit because they waited over a year to reapply. They did apply in June, but then since we didn't have a July meeting, they got bumped to now. So it's 13 months. We didn't have a meeting in July.
In fact, we have June minutes we didn't approve of yet, but
Right. But
we did have a June meeting.
we didn't have the July meeting. They applied in June, but we didn't have the July meeting, so they're being
Right.
seen now.
It's too late for the June meeting for review by us.
To be, well,
Well,
If they
wouldn't
would've-
be reviewed if it had been in advance, far enough in advance of the 1 year,
correct.
we wouldn't have been involved.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Clears it up. Somewhat. No, it does, it does.
I'm sorry, I know you've explained all about the lot, but in my head, there used to be a 2-story building there facing Pearl Street, right? Is that what he's proposing? The front's gonna still face the short side, the 40-foot side?
Correct.
And then is it a 2-story that he's,
It'll be a 2-story.
1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms? That's what was interesting.
Be a 4-unit, wouldn't
I'm not sure about the number of bedrooms per unit, but it would be a 4-unit.
Okay.
Is there any minimum parking requirements for anything like that currently that we have to worry about? Or-
Not for this one, no. Overall, the majority, the sticking point is just the fact that the lot is only 40 feet wide, which in fact it should be 100 feet wide for a 4-unit. And if they applied a month earlier, then they wouldn't even be here before the board.
Regarding that narrowness thing, I was looking here under the review criteria, and A1 mentions down here exceptional irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, steepness of the lot, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, obviously narrowness is the problem here, and that would give us an avenue of possible approval. And of course, 4 down there also says whether it's substantial variance and the minimum necessary to make possible the reasonable use of the land or structures.
Well, the question that comes to my head is, if it was a duplex, would they meet at least the setback requirements because they wouldn't need as much space, or is it just, I just wonder why he picked the 4, because that's what burnt down? And not that he tried to fit something that would fit the lot better. That's a question I've got for him whenever I get a chance to speak to him.
Well, I figure with a 2-story building, I figure the footprint should be about the same, so I mean,
Yeah, well,
it should be, but like you said, it'd be nice to have plans to review. But
well, a duplex could be narrower, 2-story. Okay.
I think where I'm stuck is, will the property in question yield a reasonable return, whether that can be any other beneficial use of the property without the variance? You could build a single family, correct?
That is correct.
I think we have too many unknowns right now.
Yeah.
I think we ought to table this until the applicant can be here.
I would agree.
That makes sense to me.
Is there anything I can help you clear up?
I think we just need to hear from him on his intent and, you know, exactly what he plans to do, other than a 4-unit building.
Wouldn't his intent then be governed by you and by the planning commission in the future when the plans are submitted?
Well, So when like a formal application is submitted, I would review it and we would approve it.
And if we grant the variance, the 4-unit that he would propose would be again subject to review by planning department or planning commission. Is it department or commission?
Department.
Planning department to determine whether it complies with building requirements. And again, if administrative waivers are available for setback, and what we're doing is just allowing a 4-unit to be rebuilt probably with the same footprint as the original 4-unit. Is that
That's correct.
fair understanding? Okay.
That's exactly it.
I'm uncomfortable because normally when we grant a variance, there's dimensions mentioned as far as the setback, and you mentioned that too, Chairman. Is it 2 feet or is it 0 feet, or what are they asking for?
Again, we don't have enough information.
Yeah,
The thing
so-
about it is, if an administrative waiver is not available to allow such a deviance from, it's gonna be back here anyway.
And
We're just allowing Mr. Decker to propose a 4-unit to the planning commission for future approval or denial and return back to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Correct. And like, as I've mentioned before, the front, side, and rear yard setbacks would all be met. This isn't about the other setbacks. This is solely about the lot width. So the lot width only being 40 feet wide is what prohibits a 4-unit residential building from being built, because it doesn't meet the site development standards. That's supposed to state that it's supposed to be 100 feet wide. They lost their legal nonconforming status because they applied after a period of time, after the home has been demolished for a period of time greater than a year.
Was there a basement in this particular structure?
There was, yep.
So, do I understand that if the foundation had been retained, that a structure could have been rebuilt and not be considered a non-conforming use?
Correct.
So the foundation itself would have been sufficient with the structure above having been raised?
Correct. And I believe that was their original intent. Their application just didn't come in time. So it's essentially same building being built on the same footprint.
I'd move that the variance be granted.
I'll second that motion.
Stefan Wanamaker,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
No.
Jim Hall,
No.
Gary Gross.
No.
Okay.
Down.
Okay, it moves
Do we
us to our next case, number 1023, a request by applicant Michael Taylor for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 4500 Riverview Avenue.
Really quick. So we don't have, the motion did not pass.
That's true.
So,
So is there a motion to continue or is there a motion to deny?
I would like to make a motion to continue because I just think we need to hear more from the owner and the architect.
I certainly understand, David, Mr. Cash's concern there, and I think he explained it really well. It's just unusual in a case like this, when we've had a property come before us, not to have a little more detail. That's the only reason that I would like to have the applicant here. Just not having the applicant to be able to see plans that were presented, just so that we can review the setback requirements, those sorts of details. Because they're lacking, it makes it very difficult to make the decision, so.
I'll second the motion if there's one on the table here.
I made a motion to continue.
Yeah.
Gary Gross,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash,
No.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, very good. Okay, we'll come now to our next case, 1023, a request by applicant Michael Taylor for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 4500 Riverview Avenue. Mr. Metz?
So tonight before us, we have an request by applicant Michael Taylor for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 4500 Riverview Avenue. The property is zoned R2 low-density residential district. The variance request is to allow for the construction of an internally illuminated ground-mounted sign that exceeds 7 feet from grade, whereas the Middletown Development Code does not permit ground-mounted signs in residential zoning districts for non-residential purposes to be internally illuminated or exceed 6 feet in height from grade. The property is zoned R2 low-density residential district. The purpose of the R2 low-density residential district is to provide for low-density, single-family residential uses in a more urban setting than the R1 district, and which is served completely by public infrastructure adequate for the applicable density of the development. As you can see here, here is the subject property. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 122007, permanent signs permitted in residential districts, C states, no such sign or any portion of the structure shall exceed 6 feet in height. As you see in the image below, the height is 93 inches. To the top left is what the sign currently looks like, and to the bottom right is what the sign will look like. Here's the approximate location of the sign. As you can see, the property is approximately 7.5 acres, allowing it to be internally illuminated. The applicant is here tonight solely because they would like the height of the sign to be 7 feet total. The development code maxes the size out at 6 feet. An administrative waiver would allow the sign to be 6 feet 7 inches. So legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way. And all comments were forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We received quite a bit of public feedback in support of this application. Would you like me to read the area and dimensional variance review criteria? It is the same review criteria as before.
No, it's all right.
Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of Common Pleas as provided in Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
An externally illuminated sign would be permitted?
So an
6'7" was the max that with
What-
waiver?
Yeah, well, it can be externally or internally illuminated. Either or would be permitted based off the size of the property and then the distance from the residential neighbors.
Oh, so we're only looking at a 5-inch
5 inches.
5-inch variance over an administrative waiver, which would have been available.
Yep, that is correct. That ends my staff report, and the applicant is present.
All right. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And if identify yourself.
Mike Taylor, Vice President at Pinnacle Architects, 480 Vantage Point, Miamisburg. Also representing the church and a member of the church. Yeah, first of all, thank you to the planning department, Mr. Metz, for all his help. Great guy. He went through the whole process with us, helped us figure out which forms to fill out, and we do appreciate him a lot. Basically, and the first slide shown was actually the Church of God.
That's across the street from us. That's not us.
I'm sorry.
But we're the Baptist church across the street. Just a couple of things. The Brill Boulevard corridor is not your typical quiet R2 low density residential setting. It's a 6-lane highway with huge setbacks. It's an arterial thoroughfare, so I think you got to treat it a little differently in this case, which the code allows because we're more than 3 acres. We are an institution and we met the other condition. It actually has a LED messaging sign on both sides, which is permitted. I was surprised. But I thought the internally lit portion was not permitted and the height was a little too tall. The site's kind of unique from the top southern part down to about where the sign is. It drops 18 feet in grade, so we need a really tall sign. We need a big sign. It looks small in here, but the actual existing sign is 7'1" tall and 105 inches wide. This sign would propose is 7'9" tall and 102 inches, 3 inches narrower. So it's basically the same size sign. If we do internally lit and you spotlight it, you can't see an LED message sign. So that's kind of a little issue with the code there. But I think by having the LED, the internally lit is only the First Baptist Church and the 4500 down below. And it's going to be scaled back a little bit so you can see the illuminated LED sign. So I don't think it's asking a whole lot. We do have 40 signatures and approval. I was going to just submit for the record, which I sent to Mr. Metz, and I think he gave to you. This is super important to the church. A lot of the members are here for our outreach. We have a lot of people that come, especially the last 3 years, needing things. We provide a lot for them. It'll tell them exactly where we are, and that it's important to have the 4500 and our name on the sign. We also have daycare of 125 kids that remained open through COVID, one of the only ones in Middletown. We'll be able to message on this for our daycare kids when we're closed, things like that. So it is something we've wanted for 20 years. But here to answer any questions, and we thank you for your review and appreciate your time tonight. Yes, sir.
Over here you say the overall height would be 7'9"?
Yes, 93 inches.
But-
If we go back to the,
I'm looking at it.
Our math was wrong, Mr. Cash.
Oh, okay. So it is 7'9".
93 inches is 7.75 feet. Just checked it out right now.
I mean, it's 8 inches taller than existing.
Right.
If we make it a little smaller, the 4500 will get close to the ground, and with that, the grade and the 45 mile an hour, I think you might miss it, but I don't personally think it's a huge deal, but up to you guys.
Question for you, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, sir.
On the illuminated part,
Uh-huh.
I agree with what you said, is that the internal illumination is under question.
Yes.
Is there a amount of lumens or how bright that thing can get? Or?
There is, and our sign company is CAP Sign from Dayton. They put all that technical information there for Mr. Metz. And like I said, I'm sure it is not something super bright because you won't be able to see we want them to see the center, not the top and the bottom necessarily.
So it's just the name and the address that's going to be internally
Yes.
lit?
Yes.
And the rest is just going to be a
It's all
TV
metal.
screen
All
type.
metal, nice fonts that you can read now, not like our old sign.
Okay.
So I'm looking at He Is Risen. Is that portion of the sign
LED,
LED? So that's
3 feet by 8 feet, both sides.
All right, so that's programmable.
Yes, and we'll meet the 8 second, whatever the regulations are from the city about how often you can change it. I doubt we'll be that frequent.
So the only internally illuminated is First Baptist Church of Middletown, 4500.
Yeah, and the symbol there, the yellow symbol, those are, I think it's like a plexiglass. It's LED strip lights in the middle, and that's all that is illuminated. I think it'll be better, because right now we have spotlights on it, and I'm sure the neighbor across the street can see those. Even though they're 200 feet away, closest house is about 200 feet from that. There's about 3 homes that are
Mr. Metz, the code addresses internal illumination, but does it address the LED portion?
It does. That's considered a changeable copy sign, which would be permitted.
Okay.
It's permitted, which surprised me, yeah, that it is permitted. Because of conditions, because we're more than 3 acres, we're an institution, and there was one other.
75 feet from all
We're
residential.
75 feet or more from a right-of-way.
Mr. Metz, is my understanding then that the internal illumination part is not permitted, or it is permitted?
It's stated that it would not be permitted. It is here for your review as well, and there might have been a little bit of confusion. The changeable copy sign is permitted. Brightness, though, is actually less than what it is for the changeable copy sign. So you won't notice it. You shouldn't notice it.
I think the reason I was confused is because the Church of God across the street has an internally illuminated sign right on the corner. Not smaller, but it's internally illuminated, isn't it? It was.
Maybe not. I looked at that one the other day. I think
It's a new one.
Externally,
Oh, really?
but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I checked it out. I know it's not LED.
I'm in favor of what you're trying to do. I just trying to think with these guys here, and so we don't give the entire city the right to move their signs up another 1.5 feet or whatever it is. So that,
8 inches.
Yeah.
Well, over the code, yes.
and I think because of the corner situation, it is somewhat unique in that it's not near the residence, and we've talked about 200 feet away from the closest residence. I don't know, can we somehow phrase the motion so that we isolate this case?
I think it is a unique, like I said, a unique property, the grades, the distance, the speed, the size of the arterial highway, the faces.
I think we agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Taylor, I have one more question. Is this going to have some kind of photo cell in it that at night it will dim the LED boards?
I do not know that. I could ask Cap. I asked them to be here tonight, and they didn't show up, so.
The reason I'm asking
Find
that, I don't know if you've driven up the main drag in Franklin. First Baptist of Franklin
Yes.
has a sign on the corner, and it's about umpteen megawatts at night. You
Right.
sit there at the light, and it about blinds you.
Right.
That was my concern.
We'll ask Cap if, I know this thing is pretty technologically advanced, so if we can turn it down after,
Yeah, I think it works by photo cell. When it gets
9 o'clock,
dark, it
we'll do
turns it down,
yeah,
or a timer or something like that.
yeah, those ones that are too bright or
Oh, yeah.
hurt your eyes when you're driving. We'll be sensitive to that for sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Okay, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and we can move to deliberations.
Let me take care of Jerry's question. The review criteria says each case shall be determined on its own facts, so we're not setting precedent with doing this.
Right.
B, I know I've had that question before.
Okay, well, as long as we're comfortable with what you're saying, that's fine with me.
Yeah, because it could be different if someplace else you wouldn't have near the distance from the sign from residential or other things that you have here. So it should be special
And I believe criteria 1 there would probably cover the size of the lot, the steepness of the grade. I think that'd be the option.
I agree.
Someone like to make a motion, include the hardship criteria?
I move that we grant the variances, and now is it 2 variances or 1? Is it 1 for the internally illuminated sign and 1 for the grade and the height, or?
You can do it as one.
Okay. I grant that I move that we grant all the variances requested.
And use the hardship criteria as well. Want to state that for the record? I think we heard that number 1 in the hardship criteria.
That would apply.
Okay, yeah, that would apply.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Stefan Wanamaker,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Gary Gross.
Yes.
Thank
You got applaud very often.
We'll welcome the applause tonight. I'll tell you.
Don't let it go to our head.
Okay, that moves us to our next case, 1123, a request by applicant Chris Brown for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 6601, and I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, Terhune Drive.
Charlie Terhune.
So tonight before us, we have a request by applicant Chris Brown, who is present, for the approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 6601 Terhune Drive. The property is zone B2. The variance request is allowed for the construction of a freestanding sign that exceeds 85 feet from grade and a sign face of 160 square feet, whereas the Middletown Development Code does not permit freestanding signs in the B2 district to exceed 20 feet in height from grade or to have a sign face greater than 150 square feet. The purpose of the B2 Community Business District is to provide for areas of the city that will contain a wide variety of commercial and office uses to meet the needs of the city and region that require access to major arterial streets and are in close proximity to major residential neighborhoods. You can see the property located with the arrow. Middletown Development Code, Chapter 122008, permanent signs permitted in non-residential districts. Table 1220-2, maximum sign areas and height for freestanding signs. In the image below, you'll see that the street frontage is approximately 145.5 feet. I wouldn't say that is 100% accurate. Our maps could be slightly off. With that being stated, from 0 to 150 feet for lot frontage width, we are at maximum sign area of 50 square feet, and a maximum sign height of 8 feet. This is an imagery provided by the applicant showing what the sign would look like in comparison to the surrounding neighbors. So again, the sign is 160 square feet. It's 120 inches tall, 192 inches wide sign cabinet, double-sided, internally illuminated, 85 feet overall height to top of sign cabinet. Proposed pylon sign placement. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance request meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners in contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way. I received no comments. Then we have our area and dimensional review criteria. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of Common Pleas as provided in Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506. That ends my staff report, and the applicant is present.
Any questions from Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
There's an obvious comparison here because there's a Wendy's sign right across the street, which appears to be, as it stands, even higher than the 85-foot that's the proposed sign for El Rancho Grande. Was that a sign erected by variance approval, or was it a prior to current building code requirements?
For that Wendy's sign, I'm not sure.
That Wendy's one?
Remember anything?
At that big grade.
Are there any other, I'm very familiar with being a daily customer at Lowe's. I'm very familiar with these signs out there. Any other pole signs besides Wendy's that you can?
Within half a mile, there's probably another 10.
Okay, Applebee's they have a pole sign, a pile?
I'm not sure about Applebee's, but there's the Cracker Barrel, there's the 2 hotels that are over there. There's the Cancun that's on the other side of 122.
We just
And a
proved
few of the
that
other
one.
restaurants. So,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thanks.
I'm gonna ask the question again about illumination on that internally. Is that unique? Is the Wendy's one internally lit or anything? Because that thing just stands out like it's already bright and it's in a picture. And I mean, we have no regulation on how bright a sign can be, apparently.
No, we do have regulation on how bright a sign can
We
be.
do have regulation.
Oh, okay.
So the lumens that Jerry was talking about earlier would be subject to approval by the planning department.
Correct.
Okay. Well, let's wait till somebody comes.
Okay. All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. Identify yourself, if you would, please.
Chris Brown, Carpenter Sign Service, 2701 Spring Grove Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45225. Applicant for El Rancho Grande Mexican Grill and Cantina. Thank you guys for your time tonight. So we're requesting obviously a variance in size and overall height due to where this property sits on Green Drive. As you can see, the adjacent property, Wendy's, it's probably 20 to 25 feet below grade from there. And from down from, 22, it's, quite a bit of a drop off. So the regulations of the signs, I think it was a 10-foot sign, you're never going to see that from the road. You know what I mean? This customer has been here, I think they bought and developed this probably about 20 years ago. So they've got about 11 locations throughout the tri-state area. And so we're just seeking a variance to allow a sign of similar size to what is around there. The Comfort Inn sign, I think, around the corner is about 226 square feet. This sign that we're asking for is 160 square feet. We don't have the Wendy sign. I think when we have that measured from the ground, but again, the elevation change is, 20 to 25 feet is around 60, 65 feet. So we're at that extra 25 foot to try to get up. So it's just visible down, 22, even possibly from 75. So that is our request. It is an internally lit sign. All the stuff that, you were asking about would be, there's only so many manufacturers that make all the internal lighting for a lot of these signs. Same people make the Wendy sign, make the Comfort Inn, etc. So it would be on a timer or photo cell, so it would be on at night. It would be a flex face material, to be technical to know with vinyl graphics. And anything of this size is obviously going to be engineered from the cabinet to the pole to the footer. So all those plans would have to be designed, submitted to the city to be reviewed. I will say the only thing that could change might just be the artwork layout. I mean, El Rancho Grande's logo is what it is, but they could change the background instead of white to make it, let's just say red, and have their name be in white or vice versa. So I don't want there to be any confusion of, well, we looked at this and it was white, now it's red. Having said that, I don't think they're going to put a red sign next to a red sign, but it is their location, it is their money, and it's a significant investment to build something like this. So they're looking to move forward with something as we've proposed. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about this or anything else.
Not asking you to speak for the owner of the restaurant, but they have been there for 20 years. And I know they have a bustling business there. And it's not relevant, but the question in my mind is, it's been 20 years since there's been a request to put a sign up there.
Well, to be truthful.
Again, it's not relevant why they want to do it now versus 15 years ago.
Well, I'm sure you guys remember a few months ago, there was probably some other sign company in front of you to ask to repair the Golden Corral sign, which is going to be one of their biggest competitors, which it is down there. So as soon as they found out they bought that property, they encouraged me to look into it, because as business has been okay, like everything else, you know, competition, food costs, everything up, people not going out as much, they're just looking to, you know, have a little bit better visibility, because for people that don't know they're there, they're going to see, you know, the business that's right there on the highway with the sign that's 100, you know.
That makes sense.
in the air.
Makes sense, because we
This
were,
is what has kind of spurred this. I mean, obviously, they would never probably think about investing this type of money for this beforehand because of the expense, you know. They don't even have, currently, they don't even have a ground sign, because, like I said, where it sits on the property, the building sign, you know, is bigger than what a ground sign would be. So
Makes
that
sense.
other restaurant opening, talking to my contact through, you know, the president of El Rancho Grande, that is their concern and why, you know, this has kind of moved forward. I'm about a month late in getting the paperwork in, so we try to get on last month's docket, but, you know, it happens.
I got one question. I have no problem with your 85 feet. It's obviously, the topography helps you there as far as us approving it. Why is it just 10 feet bigger than what the zoning thing says? Is that just a coincidence that you
Well, I think, you know, the overall, I can't remember, James, can you put the square footage back up there for me, so I don't say anything?
This one?
So it's 160 square feet, you know, it's a 10-foot by 18-foot cabinet. Can you go back to the regulations for this district we're in? So based on what this is in our lot frontage there, the building, it's only allowing a 50 square foot maximum size sign, which something like that is this wide by this, right? You could never take something this wide by this wide, put it 85 foot up in the air, you would never see it. It's not visible. So that's why the size is so big. And then obviously the height is what we're asking for as well, because of where the property sits and along with all the competing other restaurants and stuff, they just looking for some visibility. Even though they have been here for 20 years, like I said, just as the area has changed, there's more competition.
Okay, I see what the confusion is. If it's 301 feet,
You
that
know,
would
the
allow
lot that they have
150.
is down there, it's 145.5 feet frontage, so, you know, I think this location is, you know, 60 feet outside of a different district which has different stuff. Either, no matter where it was gonna have to be approved for a variance based on the size and height.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. Okay, seeing none. I do have a question, Mr. Metz. I know that just in the B2 district itself, and this kind of along the lines of Mr. Cass's question too, you know, 20 years, we haven't seen many requests for a sign of this size in that area. From a planning perspective, looking at the master plan, was there, I thought at one time there was discussion about trying to minimize the number of pole signs that we were adding in the city. Can you maybe talk about that at all, or is there any discussion, just from a planning perspective, was there, it seems like we were moving more towards the ground-mounted signs as opposed to some of the higher pole signs?
Yep. So, in the 2018 edition of the Development Code, there was a movement to start removing all of our pole signs, and to prohibit new pole signs that are what we would consider like the size of like the Wendy's. We were trending towards removing that, which we updated our development code to match that. Now, most of the pole signs that you see within the area have been permitted through the BZA. So,
That's always driving me crazy because of the expressway and the visibility that people want to get for their businesses because of the expressway there and the traffic that goes past. I mean, that place, people, and I've been there numerous times, people that live here know it, but if it's trying to draw people from, that don't know the area, you wouldn't even know it's there. And it's an awkward way to get there anyway, sometimes, you know. So, you know, I understand why they want to do that, but that whole pole sign stuff drives me crazy, because we had that one on Dixie Highway not too long ago, and what was it, the
Waffle
the
House,
yeah, the Waffle House.
which never got erected.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, and I just feel that one is probably beyond what I would like to see from a standpoint of access or visibility from the expressway. So I don't know how we manage that, but it's just always been a real, paradox for me, or something that I don't understand how to manage. But
Well, obviously, I-75 is driving all these pole signs.
Right.
You go up and down 75, you see them everywhere,
yeah, sure,
nearby an exit.
yeah, I would do it too. So.
Oh, yeah.
Can you take a motion?
Any other comments? Any other comments at all? No. Someone want to make a motion then?
I move that we approve this variance.
I'll second it.
And it's because of the gravity and the position of it to the highway. I mean, the
A1 would seem to
topography.
be applicable to this variance, to the granting of this variance, that there are special conditions and circumstances which exist that are peculiar to the land.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Mr. Metz, when you get a chance, we'll call the roll.
Gary Gross,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that brings us to our next case, 1223. A request by applicant Mike Taylor for Pinnacle Architects on behalf of Adam Kushner for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 6730 Roosevelt Avenue.
So now before us, we have a request by applicant Mike Taylor with Pinnacle Architects on behalf of Adam Kushner and Joy Kushner for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 6730 Roosevelt Avenue. The property is zoned B2 Community Business District. The variance requested allow for the reduction in the front yard setback and to allow for a stacking lane to be set back less than 25 feet from the public right-of-way. Public right-of-way is where this curb cut is here. And setback would be, or where the drive-through lane would be, right where this parking is currently. It's approximately 10 feet, 12 feet in some areas, with a massive drop-off on the road, and then a hill as it comes back up. The property is Zone B2. The purpose of the B2 Community Business District is to provide for areas of the city that will contain a wide variety of commercial and office uses to meet the needs of the city and region that will require access to major arterial streets and are in close proximity to major residential neighborhoods. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 12-1805, Vehicle Stacking Space Requirements, states stacking lanes shall be set back a minimum of 25 feet from the public right-of-way. As I've said before, well, here is the stacking lane. Currently, there is a parking lot that is there now. The parking lot even extends a little bit further towards the public right-of-way than what the stacking lane would. This right here is Highway 122, and then this is the setback. As I mentioned before, some areas it varies between 10 to 12 feet linear, but there is that massive drop-off. This is for a Starbucks. Here's imagery of what the property will look like once developed and once built. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way, and all comments were forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I did not receive any comments. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of Common Pleas as provided in the Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506. So just a quick recap. Tonight, all you would be approving is for the construction of a stacking lane exactly where this parking lot is, or even a little bit closer, for a Starbucks. It's not getting any closer than what the parking lot is. It's not getting any further away. It's approximately about the same. The applicant is present, and they would be able to speak on that.
This may not even be relevant, but this will be a freestanding Starbucks in that parking lot. How does, and that building there being a 4 or 5 story office building, which probably requires a minimum number of parking spaces, how does that reconcile then by taking all of those parking spaces to the use of that? Are we does this create a I don't want to say violation, but does this limit beyond the allowable minimum number of parking spaces for that office building?
That's an excellent question, and it does not. There's more than ample amount of parking spaces. As you can see here, there is a parking garage that has shared parking access. I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 stories, but I did the calculations with Mr. Mike Taylor here, and there was plenty of parking spaces. And in addition to that, the future restaurant, Starbucks, would still have enough parking spaces without the shared parking, I believe.
So
It
both
would be close.
both businesses then would have the required minimum number of parking spots.
Correct.
I mean, I don't see any business going on in that building anyway, but I don't know what's going on in that building. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had one question too. I assume by this presentation that the Starbucks at the end of Culbertson is dead, because we had approved a while back a sign variance for that.
That is correct.
Okay.
The signage that's on that picture there, is that going to be impacted at all?
It's going to be slightly changed, but I did not include that because you're not reviewing that.
Okay. And the only concern that I have is that the headlights in the evening are going to be facing the traffic coming. And, you know, it's 10 feet off the thing, but that's just the only thing I see that could possibly interfere with, they've got their bright lights on or something with the guys coming up the road. But that's just a weird thing that I see.
Could you go back to that? Just follow up with what Jerry was, could you go back to that one there? Yeah, it does look like the cars will be coming from the west into the stacking lane and then heading east. Oh, no, heading east and then turning and heading west as they get their coffee through the stacking lanes. Okay.
But you're coming up left to right on that view, right, of leaving, going towards the expressway, 122. That's what I'm just suggesting.
Good point.
And there's, I take it that this building, there's not going to be anybody, what's the foot traffic look like? Is, like you say, the number of parking spots in that entire lot is pretty limited. Is it only to serve people in cars, or is there actually foot traffic in that place?
So there's more parking spaces than what's just shown here. There is the shared parking with the parking garage. That's the first one. And the second one, just to be blunt, candid, and to respect the applicant, you're not actually reviewing where the headlights are going to be facing. You're reviewing whether or not the 10 to 12 feet setback going from a parking lot to a stacking lane, if that would meet the review criteria. It's all that's up for discussion now, not signs, not anything else. And as regard to the number of traffic coming in and out, I would defer to the applicant.
And to clarify one more time, Mr. Metz, the current parking lot there is going to be similar, if not the same, setback from 122 as it is now?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Michael Taylor, Vice President, Pinnacle Architects, 480 Vantage Point, Miamisburg. Just first to address a couple of your questions. Actually, that whole site is paved right now. It's all impervious. We submitted also a landscape plan to Mr. Metz. I don't know if he was able to give you that, but we were concerned with headlights. We have hedges all around the drive-through area. We have a lot more grass and lawn around this site than exists now. The existing parking actually comes out over the property line. I don't want to tell anybody, but we're getting rid of that, and we're moving it back 3 feet on this side. As far as parking, that was a concern. Originally, what was proposed by our developer, Adam Kushner is our developer. He owns the whole site and the building and the parking garage. I've got Jim Miller here from that also represents the project and Madison Properties. But they're in control of the whole site. The parking, we had a Starbucks that had a sit-in, eat-in cafe. It was moved up. We had to actually get rid of the parking garage, and when we came to the project, we're like, that's not going to fly, because there's 80 some cars in that parking garage. And that was a key. We made sure there's more than adequate parking for that office building based on, I can't remember if it's 100 or 200 square feet per space. We have that covered plus some by getting rid of this entire lot. The Starbucks, as Mr. Metz said, is we're taking 9 spots on the lower level of that parking garage to get enough parking that we don't need a variance for the drive-through itself. This is only a drive-through and a small pickup. There's like 300 square feet lobby, a new concept, one of the first in the United States that'll be built in Middletown. It's a cleaner look. It's got a lot of canopies. It's got when you drive up on this side, there's a wall that comes down at the drive-through to help with sound, because you can imagine the 12 lanes I-20 or 122. It's going to get a little noisy over here, but that'll also help, I think, a little bit with the lights. The grade, definitely this fits number 1 of your uniqueness issues. The grade from that end of the site to the other end is like 50 feet of elevation. The size of the site is very unique. It's a peninsula. If we take, and unfortunately we have 3 front yards. 122 is a front yard, Town Boulevard's front yard, Roosevelt's front yard. We're coming off of Roosevelt, exact same entrance that's there now. We're not going to mess with that. But those all required a 35-foot setback, and when you do that, there is no site left up to about halfway in that picture. But we do meet the 35 feet along Roosevelt for building setback, so we didn't need a variance for that. But as Mr. Metz said, we do need a variance for the drive-through, really on this north side, or not north side. Yeah, it is north side. Yeah. And then on the south side, we need a little, because there's a double stack and then a single. Roosevelt kind of curves, so it's actually a lot further back, but our property line doesn't curve. So the setback seems like it's not much, but as Roosevelt Avenue curves, we get more and more setback right about where the signboard will be. But I think this is going to be a great addition to Middletown. Any young person you talk to says the Starbucks and Kroger's isn't a real Starbucks, so I don't know. I'm an old guy, but I like coffee. But what the owner is planning to do, just FYI, is to improve that office building. And yes, there's not many people in it. Give it a new look. give it some paint. And Mr. Metz told us we can take that existing sign there, the pylon's about 30 feet, 32 feet. We're gonna reclad it, we're gonna do some things with it that look more like the panels we're gonna add to the building. So it'll tie together and have a Starbucks logo on top. So we don't need a variance for that either. But it's just those 2 drive lanes, and the building is into the setback on this north side, which is pretty much,
The question
yes,
that you raised in my mind is,
yes.
the way that picture looks, it looks like you're going uphill when you're going around to get your coffee. Is that still gonna, is the grade still staying the same? Is that what I heard you say?
It may not, because we had to get rid of all that asphalt.
So you might level it
Civil
out?
engineer may level it off a little bit there.
Okay.
Yeah, especially at the drive-through part, because it really, it doesn't come back too far. I mean, it might come to where that missing parking block is.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking the drive-through window's somewhere right in there.
All right.
But yeah, if we can level it off, that would be a good idea.
I wanted to ask you a question about the, you had a question about the variance itself and whether or not we could remove that stacking lane. Am I reading that correctly? Or are you asking to eliminate the stacking lane, or what's the variance on the stacking lane?
No, the stacking lanes say, Middletown's code says you have to have a 25-foot setback from any right-of-way.
Okay.
And we don't have that in the bottom stacking lane of the first 2, and we don't have it in the top on 122.
Okay.
It's closer than that, a lot closer on the north side. But actually not as close as the existing parking lot.
I just wasn't sure if you were asking to
No,
eliminate it
no.
or not. Okay.
No, just as submitted is what we're asking for.
So do you happen to know from the edge of the drive-through going around to the curb, which you pointed out was a property line, what that actually is?
To the north,
To the north.
122, it's
Yes.
3 feet.
So you're gonna be driving 3 feet from 122?
Well, the edge of the drive lane is 3 feet from our property line, but 122 is 10, 15 feet further.
Down that.
The actual roadway is not all the way up to the right-of-way line.
Okay, you got the drop-off,
Yeah,
122 and here.
you can see like where the B is?
Yeah.
In that line, see where the 122 starts? It's probably 15, 20 feet north of the actual property line. And our drive is 3 feet south, so there's 18, 20 feet between the turn lane into Town Boulevard and our drive line.
I'm not getting my question across right.
Are you asking about safety?
How are we gonna keep cars from going over?
At that point, we had to have curbs, and when you're that far in, there's a wall there you're gonna hit at the drive-through window, but it's curbs, and I shared your concern. I went out there myself and was looking at it, and I think the drop-off isn't super severe right there for those 3 cars that don't have a wall on the other side of them.
Can't save people from themselves.
Well, that's true. That's true anywhere.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting question, though. I mean, when we're looking at that slope that comes off and the uniqueness of what you're proposing here, we certainly, my wife told me not to screw up the Starbucks. So we all agree we want a Starbucks. I don't think there's any
Right.
doubt about that.
Right.
But just in terms of just being practical for a moment, can you share any details about, that the safety issue? Because folks coming around the corner and that as it drops off there, is there any way was there any concerns raised by engineering or Mr. Metz or others when you looked at that?
No, and our engineers, Kimley Horn, have done hundreds of these. You can see how when we curve it, we give them an extra wide curve lane to get into that final straightaway. And the drive is actually 12 feet wide inside the curbs, so that's more than typical in a drive-through. So, I mean, I feel it's safe, but
And you're gonna have Are they gonna, is this gonna be, these aren't gonna be just curb stops? Is it gonna be a formed?
Barrier curb, concrete barrier curb, that's required by your code.
How tall? Do you know?
I believe it's 8 inches, whatever engineering requires, or, you know, maybe we go a foot on, or a little, taller on the 122 side. We could do that,
This is your business, but
yeah.
my observations of Starbucks is they get a line even at Kroger's that you mentioned there.
Right.
And part of the reason they have a line, it takes them a long time to prepare whatever they're ordering.
It does.
And I mean, how long is a car's gonna sit there? We don't wanna have people backing up on the Roosevelt.
Yeah, well, you can see we're showing 16 before it
Yeah.
backs up at all, but
If they park
the good
that
thing
good,
about
I'll
this-
be happy.
the drive-through standalones, this thing is almost 1,700 square feet. The one at Kroger's is like 300 square feet. This one has 3 times the staff.
Oh, okay, well, that might help.
It should be faster than the Kroger's, but yes, they are super popular, and it backs up. And I know in some locations there's a way to put lights or things that say full, light full, or drive-through full. but-
Well, I know
The
even.
good thing too, Roosevelt Avenue, if, you know,
I know.
there's not much traffic there.
No.
Yeah, other than it's just coming out of Olive Garden or something.
Coming out of Olive Garden on that grade, that's.
Yeah,
that's a tough one.
I love it just like he says too. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
a matter that I know they're slow. Even at the airport when I go out of Cincinnati, there's a line
Right.
there out the door
Right.
sometimes.
Oh, right, right.
So that's the only thing I'd be,
And I think, I get you, those tiny ones, just, they don't have staff at
all
all.
right, well, that's neither here nor there. Let's vote on this thing and.
And this is not a sit-in, so there's not a lot of people there, but it is
You
a
get
drive.
my granddaughter in there, you got a 20-minute debate.
That's with my daughter.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Did you want to speak, sir? Please come forward, sure.
Thanks for seeing us. Raise your right hand, please. Yep. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
And if you'll identify yourself, please.
Jim Miller, Senior Property Manager with Madison Properties. I'm working with Adam Kushner as owner's rep on this project. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate, this concept for Starbucks a little different. People now, a large percentage of the business will be online pre-orders, which a lot of those folks will drive and park in one of the other spots and run in and grab. So they're not all gonna sit on a line to order and pick up. So with that, those two concepts, I don't think, and I know Michael's done a lot of study, but I don't think at all that the line will be an issue that would go out onto Roosevelt at all. Because more than not now, a lot of people are ordering. You see it all the time online. You walk into a Starbucks and there's coffees that are already made that people are just picking up. And that's why we have those considerable number of spaces, right, as well. Right. Just wanted to,
You bring up a point, and remember we voted on that one at the corner of Roosevelt and 120, or 122 and Dixie Highway there?
Big
There's
Oh,
a
yeah,
coffee
Big
shop
B's,
back in there.
yeah.
Remember we had to pull that center divider in there so that the people could get around or something? They had to. We got people trapped in line here, and that is just my concern there. If somebody gets in there and anything from breaking down to just being a pain in the tush, and arguing with the guy that's making the coffee, that's what we're gonna have to live with, I guess. But there's no way to get out once you're in.
I think that's the nature of the beast with a
Yeah, well.
drive-through.
Okay.
that's all I have. Okay, thank you.
Can you take a motion?
In just a minute, yeah. Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing. Any other questions, concerns? We'll move to deliberations. Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to accept the proposed variances?
I move we accept the proposed variances for the Starbucks, whatever number that is.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Jared, do you have any review criteria you'd like to cite?
I'll let one of these guys that are better at doing that do it, if there's anything we need to cite.
Well, I think A1 still applies. There's peculiar circumstances here to this property as it currently exists, which would be applicable. And then there is number 4. It is a substantial variance, but it is necessary to make reasonable use of this particular parking lot. So I think A1 and A4.
I'll accept that. Thank you, David.
All right. Stefan Wanamaker,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Gary Gross.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
You might.
Any old or new business this evening, Mr. Metz?
No.
Well, the only old business would be the approval of the June 7th meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we ever
We
approved
did.
those. We approved.
We never did make a motion.
Yeah.
I took you off.
Okay, you fixed all that?
Yep.
Okay, do we have a motion for June 7th minutes? Make a motion?
I'll move that we approve those minutes as presented.
Second?
Gary Gross,
Yes?
Jim Hall.
Abstain?
Yep. Todd Moore,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
All right.
All right, that brings us to adjournment. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I hate to be such a stinking. You should sit in when I'm reviewing them this one. This poor guy.
She's like, don't screw up Starbucks. I'm like, well, but they are coming up.
Yeah, well,
But
well, thank you, because I always feel I'm on the weird end of
think you
weird.
are.
Thank you.